Hello and welcome back to Bits and Bobs. Today's video is the life and legacy of King George IV. The story begins with King George III, as we see here, the father of George IV. George III's wife, and of course therefore George IV's mother, was, who we see here on screen, Princess Charlotte. These two had many children, the eldest being Prince George, who was born on the 12th of August in 1762, and would go on to be the future king. However, George III, his father, reigned for almost 60 years as the longest reigning king, and therefore there was a lot of waiting for George IV to do. So, what did he get up to in these years? Well, as a child he went to study at school and was a bright student, as well as having fun with lots of his family, brothers and siblings as well. As he got older, at age 18 he moved out and was given his own residence, and loved to drink and have parties with lots of friends there. At age 21 he was given a £60,000 present from the government, a sum equal to £7.75 million today, and had an annual income from his father of £50,000 a year, or £6.5 million a year in today's money. So as you'd expect for a future king, he was very well off. In 1785, George IV married his first of two wives, Maria Fitzherbert, as seen here on screen. She lived from 1785 to 1830. Now George IV led an exuberant lifestyle, plunging him into debt in 1787, a few years after his marriage. However, Parliament gave him £220,000 to sort out his affairs, worth $30 million today, and this was more than enough to stabilise his financial position. Now then, moving on to the Regency era of George V. In late of 1810, the king fell ill once again and was unable to fulfil all of his duties. Therefore, it was declared that George IV, or Prince George, was appointed Prince Regent, meaning he would take on a lot of George III's tasks that he was unable to do due to his mental illness, and therefore Prince George ruled on behalf of George III for this time. The wonderful and beautiful Regent's Park in London is named after this era and the Prince Regent, George IV. George IV, as Prince Regent, also commissioned the Regent's Canal, also running through London, still in operation today, as can be seen now over 200 years later. Now during this time, Prince George could exercise the full power of the king, unless ordered otherwise by the king. As his health declined further and further, he was able to take on less engagements and duties, and finally George III passed away in 1820, just before his 82nd birthday, meaning George IV became king on the 29th of January 1820. He was almost 58 and had experience ruling due to the Regency era. His coronation was later on the 19th of July in 1821, and here are a few pictures. This was a lavish coronation and cost £238,000 back in the day, equal to $35 million in today's money. During his reign, George IV visited Scotland, meaning he was the first monarch to visit Scotland since Charles II in the mid-1600s. George IV was a huge and passionate collector about artwork and added lots of pieces to the royal collection. As we can see here, many of the display pieces for the royal collection are ones that were obtained by George IV during his reign. George IV commissioned and had built the Royal Pavilion in Brighton, a lovely grand building now used as a museum today. George IV also founded the Royal Academy of Music in 1823, a great and grand building once again. George IV also ordered an overhaul and expansion of the British Museum to house the ever-growing collection of treasures from around the empire stored in the British Museum, needing more space. George IV also commissioned the opening of the Royal Gallery in London, once again another grand and splendid building to house artwork. This here we see is Buckingham Palace, and George IV ordered extensive repairs and upgrades to be done on the palace, as well as Windsor Castle. It seems George was a fan of big, grand buildings. Now George IV also appoints the first ever Prime Minister of Britain, and is, as we see to the left here, the Duke of Wellington. In 1829, the Catholic Relief Act is signed, therefore permitting Catholics to be members of Parliament and take more roles in government. Big buildings, big parties, big, grand everything, and big George IV. By the end of his reign, he was fairly overweight and unhealthy. He died on the 26th of June in 1830 after a little over 10 years on the throne of England. He died at Windsor, aged 67, almost 68, and reigned for just over 10 years. Now, he outlived his children, as all of them died fairly young, and so the throne was passed to his younger brother, William IV, Prince William formerly, and of course then William IV taking the throne in 1830 after the passing of George IV. Now comment down below any additional information that we missed over in this little quick summary of George IV's life, as we'd like to know, and of course please do subscribe as well if you have enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon for more coins on Bits and Bobs. Bye bye.